I'm the co-owner and co-director of Child Aware and a psychologist at that practice. We have 2 offices in Brisbane, one at Woolloongabba and one at Carina. My current role consists of providing counselling and psychology services to children, young people and families, as well as training intern psychologists, so provisionally registered psychs I provide supervision to on a weekly basis to help them towards full registration, as well as overseeing the practice and the everyday running of 2 busy psychology services with a team of other psychologists. So a typical day at Child Aware for me is going into individual counselling sessions with children, adolescents or parents, working on a range of presenting mental health issues. So I provide counselling services to them, as well as providing supervision to provisionally registered psychologists. So on any given day I'll be in and out of sessions with clients or provisionally registered psychologists, training them for their full registration. Another part of my role is being the co-director, so overseeing the daily running of the practice, which includes the background accounting, invoicing of clients, marketing the practice, generating referrals, so maintaining our referral base with our local GPs and promoting the service so we're sustainable and continuing to receive referrals to fill our caseloads. So a lot of time goes into the management and running, as well as the recruitment of psychologists and managing the team. The key things that I like most about my role is that I have diversity. So I can be working with a child that's 5 years of age in the morning and seeing a parent who's 40 in the afternoon, as well as running workshops and training for professional development, so teaching upcoming psychologists about how to work with children and young people. So my role's really diverse, which is interesting and keeps the variety. I also really enjoy the flexibility of working with a team and being able to work in the best interests of children throughout our work at Child Aware. So I get to work with a really passionate team who are working with children and families. The key skills that I think are really important in performing my role is time management and organisation. I think they're very important when we're seeing clients to make sure that we're able to manage our caseload effectively and provide good outcomes to families, as well as management and business skills, because that's something that's been very important in developing and building the business, as well as professionalism and ethics, which is key in psychology. By that I mean being professional in the sense of providing a service that's reliable, consistent, continuity of care for clients so that their best interest is always upheld. And ethics, we're guided by the Code of Ethics and Ethical Guidelines in Psychology, so always knowing where we stand and what our obligations are towards our clients to make sure that we're providing services that are safe, ethical and professional for our clients. The most challenging aspect for me is the business management side of things. It's not something that I received formal training in. Doing a psychology degree, I haven't done any formal business training, so it's been a steep learning curve and learning things the hard way, which has been great because I've developed lots of skills out of that, but that's definitely been the most challenging. So things that I include in that are developing accounting skills, being able to manage the books and the payroll of staff, as well as marketing the business, HR, management of staff, those types of skills that I've had to develop over the years of running the practice. I studied here at Griffith and did my honours in psychology, so my 4 years study, and then decided to do 2 years of supervised practice. So I left university and worked full-time for 2 years under supervision by a primary supervisor, and that's how I obtained my full registration. So from there, I always knew that I wanted to work with children and families, so I went into a role working with at-risk young people and their children, and developed a keen interest in working in the area of trauma and child protection. So all of my roles have been primarily focused on building my qualifications and skills in the area of working with children and families. So throughout all of those roles, I was then able to culminate all the skills that I've built, and then starting Child Aware as my own practice. The idea behind Child Aware is to be a service that's accessible. So I spend a lot of time working in non-for-profit sectors and then the private sector as well, and there was a service gap between public and private services for families, and that's where we hope to bridge the gap. So Child Aware was founded in 2013, and we've worked in that service ever since, being able to then provide affordable and accessible counselling services for children, young people and families. I've always been interested in working with children, and psychology has always been an interest of mine. So I chose working in the area of children and families because child protection and safety is a really important value to me. So it was natural that I then went in the direction of working with children and families, predominantly making sure that I'm always working in the psychology field in the best interests of children. So working with children who have experienced trauma, child protection concerns, parenting, support, those types of things, to make sure that the work that I'm doing is always working towards the best interests of kids. 10 years ago I graduated from Griffith, and so it's taken me 10 years throughout my career to now be working in a psychology practice that I co-own and co-direct. Throughout that time I have worked in the private practice setting as well as non-for-profit settings. So I've been able to develop experience across a range of organisations. So I've worked in areas like at-risk homelessness with young people in Brisbane, as well as working in a specialist service for child sexual abuse, and then working in private settings where I've worked in vocational rehabilitation and those types of roles. So I had a key goal in mind when I left uni to obtain full registration as a psychologist, and I set out to do that firstly by working with adults. So I knew that working with children, you always have to work with adults because parents are a part of working with kids, and I needed to be comfortable working with adults. So I went into a role as a vocational consultant to gain better skills of working with adults, because I wanted to make sure that I had skills to be able to work with families, so interpersonal skills to be able to provide psychology services and be good at that. So then I went into, after a year of that, went into working with children specifically, and then working in the areas that are high risk. So developing my skills in risk assessment, working with trauma, child protection issues. So I got a broad understanding of the different systems that help support psychology. So family court system, child protection system, those types of areas. So then when I have eventually moved into a private setting and providing a counselling service and running a counselling service, I've been able to use the skills I've developed from all of those roles previously. I would have loved to have known the time it takes to get fully registered. So in terms of career planning and knowing what I needed to achieve. So after completing your 4 years of psychology study and completing your honours year, there's an additional 2 years that need to be completed. And I also would have loved to have known that there's a range of different pathways. So doing some research and getting information on what your options are is really important. So I chose to do the 4+2 pathway to full registration. There's master's programs, there's 5+1 programs, but all of that information is really helpful so that you can make decisions based on what's right for you and what suits your circumstances. So I think going back to, if I was to be back then in early career, I would have loved to have known how 6 years is what it takes to be a fully registered psychologist, to call yourself a psychologist. My first piece of advice would be to know what you need to achieve in terms of the long term. So if you're wanting to do your honours after your 3 years, know what you need in terms of a GPA and what work you need to do to get into that year, and then know what your options are for after that year, because that will allow you to work really hard and obtain the GPA that you require, rather than limiting your options too early because you didn't have the information. The other pieces of advice would be to seek experience in the field from very early on. So whether that be in a telephone counselling role, whether that be in an administration role within a psychology practice or a psychology service, volunteering, getting your foot in the door to see what it is like being a psychologist is really helpful and helps your learning, so you can adapt what it is you're learning at university to the real world. And I think being able to develop your career even while you're studying is really helpful. So attending professional development workshops and training, so when you graduate, you're not fresh. You know your areas of interest and you have experience.